And he was a cute little Andrew Dyke, you know? He was cute. Through our relationship, he would occasionally drop a, you know what, I wonder what it's like to have a cock for a day. Mm-hmm. And I would say, oh, you wouldn't like it. Which was my way of saying, don't go there. Don't go there. And then I eventually said, well, you know, I think it's really healthy that you're asking questions because, we should all, kind of reach out and kind of understand what it's like to, live in different gendered spaces. I think it's really healthy, good for you for expanding your mind that way. So another way of saying, nice, it's good for you to think about it, but don't go there, So thus began the conversation.
Yes.
And fortunately, at the beginning of our relationship, he changed his name to Ryan. No name change required.
That was back in 1995.
Okay, that could have been a little plateau, maybe. He kind of settled into, well, I'm going to kind of consider myself to be genderqueer. I'm going to kind of accept this about myself. I'm going to be able to talk about this in these kind of terms and just kind of ease into it a little bit. And by that, I do not mean to imply, because of our story, that I consider genderqueer merely to be a gateway identity to true transsexualism. That is not my story, and that's not what I believe. And there was a free movie, Red Without Blue, was being screened there that year, about twins, and one who decides to stay a guy and has a gay identity, and the other one decides to transition. I had said, you should come out to the conference. I think you should come to the screening. I think it's a really great movie. I'd like to go see it again if you want to see it. And the point was, he had a very negative reaction about wanting to come out. And it was just seemed really odd. He was like, no, I don't want to go to that bleeping conference, or I forget exactly how it went. But I remember it was very emotionally negative. And I thought,
I flipped out.
And I said, really and he can flip out. And I said, let's talk about this. What's going on here? And
she asked me if I'm trans, and I lose it.
I don't directly.
Yes, you did.
Okay, apparently I did.
The first couple of weeks after we figured this out that I'm trans, or I ID'd as GQ because I figured I could go that far and still keep my relationship. So that was the biggest concern for me. And during this time, there was a lot of tumultuous emotions going on. I had to sit at the kitchen table for 2 weeks, and I felt like I had to witness Breanna's pain and her anger, and, she's feeling guilty because she should know better because she's trans, but, it doesn't change the fact that her partner is changing all the rules in the game after 14 years. So we processed a lot for a few weeks there, and then we kind of retreated to our corners for the rest of the year.
When it came out to me, I felt really torn because the person I loved obviously I had a clue what was going on, and I knew that once you pop the cork on this thing, putting it back in the bottle is incredibly damaging. I think it's damaging to suppress what we need in the first place. But sometimes when we've kind of wrapped it inside calluses and kind of put it out of the way and compartmentalized it out of the way, that we found a way to kind of deal with that. And I think that Ryan had gotten through a lot of other things in his life where finally he could deal with this. Okay, why can't you just accept this kind of masculine side of yourself? And maybe that's where she could have been fine, but the fact, without looking at all the options possible, you can't know that that's the right place. And so I knew that he had to really be able to hunt this down and figure out what was right for him. So I felt like I needed to be supportive and his best supporter, and yet for my own self, I still grieved, and I told him then, I think this is one of the reasons why he retreated a bit, I can't really tell you how I'm going to respond if you do decide that you need a transition. I can't really tell you how I'm going to respond to that viscerally. I've never been attracted to guys.
And so it was at dinner in Port Townsend when I was like just out of the blue, after we hadn't really discussed it much, that I quipped, I wonder what it'd be like to bind. And she said, do you? And I went, yeah, and then I dropped it and we talked about something else.
We really kind of reopened the conversation with kind of a new gambit. We said, I'm interested in binding. And up until then, you'd been like wearing, you kind of, it's like kind of like a closeted trans woman thing, wearing underwear. He was like wearing men's underwear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it's this inner process, inner workings, and just kind of trying to touchstone that thing you wanted. But when binding to me says, I want to present. It's not an internal process anymore. It's then I want to begin seeing I want to see how it will feel for the world to interact with me as masculine. And that really kind of popped the cork off it again, and forward he went. And it went pretty rapidly from there.
Yeah.
You want to take it out?
Yeah. So I figured my date was January 17th of 2007 when we had this conversation, and that's when I decided, okay, I'm going all the way, I want to transition. It's like when I finally made the decision, I just felt high for like 2 days, just like, yeah, this is right, this is what I need to do. And in a span of a few weeks, I'd come out at work, come out to my family, come out to our kids, her kids, my stepkids. And of course it was no big deal. My family is very supportive. My mother's response was, well, are you and Breanna gonna break up? And we were like, we really have no plans to. And then she was fine. One of the kids was like, God, this family is so queer. Within 6 months I had started testosterone. And then it was just saving up for surgery from then on. I considered myself pretty much, I'd been through my transition. I went through my transition in 2008. Yeah, it's been surprising on many levels, the fact that we've been able to maintain our relationship. It required a little reconfiguration that, there are still some growing pains to go through with that, but about 6 months into my transition, before testosterone had really had any effect, or was just starting to have an effect, Breanna said to me as we were driving someplace, I really miss the connection with a woman, and I absolutely cannot see you as that anymore. There's nothing in you that's female anymore. There's nothing for me to connect to like that. And about the same time, I had, thanks to Gender Oddesey play party at the Wet Spot, I decided I wanted to experiment with BDSM at the time. And I knew that they had a lot of programming for poly families and stuff like that, so I figured, well, why don't we check this out? And so we explored opening up our relationship. And I was fine with the idea in theory, it made perfect sense, but when we actually put it into practice, it's been a really hard adjustment. And that's even with having a really great partner who's perfect for her, who's interested in me. It's one of the things that we struggle with, but it's worth the work. Why should we have to throw together 15 years because she's a lesbian and wants to be with a woman, and I'm a fag and I want to be with guys?
What's the problem?
I don't see the problem. I still love her deeply. There's no need to throw the baby out with the bathwater if we can figure out a third way. So we now identify as poly.